Okay, hi, David Lawrence here. We're live on LinkedIn, and I hope you're all doing well in isolation, staying at home and looking after your family, or you're on your own and hopefully have lots of engagement with others outside your community. I've got a really great special guest today who we've got coming on shortly, hopefully with the technology, if it's working, and that's Caspar Craven. We'll be talking to Caspar, who sailed around the world twice with his 3 young children and his wife. Amazing story, and hopefully we can get Caspar to come on the line shortly. So basically, you'll be able to, we'll be able to ask him lots of questions and find out about his story. We're going to be talking a little bit about isolation and obviously the challenges people are finding within their isolation, this is obviously a difficult thing with for some people who obviously are not used to working in that way. I think a lot of people have had challenges at the moment with working on their own rather than back in the office. Others has obviously really enjoyed this moment, and I'd love to hear from you and hear how you're coping and managing through it on in your own environment. I'm just going to bring that up to make sure I've got the right information so we can make sure we can get Caspar online shortly. He'll be joining us hopefully in about 10 minutes. So some of the things that I just wanted to discuss that I know others have been using, and talking to a lot of people in the marketplace this week. People have been telling me good, interesting feedback about the challenges they've had during COVID-19. Obviously going through the virus for some people. Obviously, some people have even lost loved ones, which is obviously terrible. And I think it's a very challenging time for people. So you've got to keep positive and keep your motivation up. And some of the things that I just picked up on that have certainly been working for me, and that I've heard from other people that have been working for them, has been making sure that they really keep their day really focused like they've been doing already. So keeping the day as a structure, exactly the same structure as you're doing at the moment, or as you were doing before you were going when you were going back to the office in a normal circumstance. So that means getting up and having a morning shower, and making sure you have that shower, and starting the day as you normally would, however you might start that day. It could be making sure that you turn those news notifications off. I know that's a big challenge for everyone, particularly at this time where you've got a lot of news and a lot of information coming through. So I know that that's also a challenge for people as well. The other one I'd also say is, just turn your notifications off. So you might have lots of alerts coming through for Twitter, for BBC News, or whatever news information you come in. Just turn those notifications off, and don't keep yourself glued to the news all day. I think that's a really important one as well. Might be the kids if you've got children, the kids might be out of habit at the moment. I know it's certainly a challenge with my children, and it's trying to keep that day structure, which is quite difficult for whichever person is looking after the children, because it really has disrupted our lives as well. So that's also a challenge as well. And I know that, I'd love to hear what people are doing, to get through that. The other thing that I would say is about being resilient in doing your daily actions. And you got to make sure that you can get through those actions and make sure you do that. So I think that's also a challenge as well, making sure that you stick to the plan, stick resilient, and make sure you achieve those daily answers. I'm just going to check in to make sure we've got Caspar joining. So just give me a second and we'll see if we can do that. I know that we just making sure that the technology is there. Okay, so we're just going to check that in, and otherwise I'm just going to come back to a new LinkedIn Live and have to do that again if it's not working, but hopefully it will. So managing, I'll just talk about that resilience again. It's managing your day and managing that structure around your day. And for some, it will be quite easy because you might be working in an environment with a big company structure that you might be all day on Skype, you might be on MS Teams, you might be on Zoom meetings, and actually you've got less time now, because normally you'd have the chance to sit with people in your office and be able to go and talk to them. Now it's actually more difficult to get people's time. So I know that's a challenge for people as well. I'd love to hear what people are doing to, again, it might be that you're not all of us are lucky enough to have a garden, for example, and you might be really feeling that cabin fever, in an apartment where you're not able to get out as easily and readily as other people. So again, that can be a challenge as well. And we'll have to see how that goes. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about managing some of those things. We're going to find out a bit of the backstory of how we've got on with Caspar in terms of doing that, and what you can do going forward in, really keeping yourself motivated through this challenging period. And for some, you might be finding that actually it's pretty easy. You might be finding it's no different. And particularly for those people who are currently, working from home, have been used to working from home, this is probably pretty easy for them because they're quite used to that. So that's where we are. That's what we're doing right now. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge of them all. So yeah, I'm just gonna make sure that we've got there, and we're going to be bringing in Caspar in a few minutes. So if you just give us a second, I'm just going to try and see if we can bring him in there. Just give me a second, and we'll see if we can get him in there. Okay, so sometimes the technology doesn't work as well as I'd like it to. So we'll have to try again. I'm just going to give that link and see if we can just bring Caspar in because he's waiting patiently. Just try this one. I'm just going to say try this link instead. Let's see if we can get him in. Sometimes the technology doesn't quite go to plan, and I need to make sure that it is. So that's that one. We're just checking again, and we should be there now. Yeah, okay, so it's the wrong one. There's always the technology problems to get this started. So I think, as Phil said there, and thanks, Phil, for jumping in there, routine is so important. Do you know what? And I think it's all in the mind because, again, if you've not got that structure around you, and it can be really challenging. And I know, for example, it's all about that mindset. So, for me, waking up every day, I know that I have to have that routine, those certain things that I do within the morning. Yeah, great. I think Caspar's now joined, so that's fantastic. We'll bring him in a second. Phil, having that routine and sticking to it every day. I mean, I know I've showed it before, but my trusty egg timer is amazing for me. It keeps me focused. I can turn certain things off and get through that morning and get really, really focused and make sure that I get all those tasks done. And actually, again, it's that mindset in my mind I've got to put those calls in. I've got to speak to those people. We've got to engage with so-and-so rather than looking for excuses for not doing it. So, those are big challenges. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring Caspar in now. I'm going to see if the technology works. Sorry for the delay on that. And again, just to make that introduction, Caspar's obviously sailed around the world twice, did the second time with his young family, probably in a very small cabin, and he can talk more about the boat and amazingly how he did that. And, I'm going mad with my children downstairs. At least I can send them out in the garden. But anyway, Caspar, I'm going to bring you in. Let's see if we can get it working. Caspar, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Hi, David. Good to see you.
Sorry about the technology there. That was me sending you the wrong link, so I apologise for that.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Good to speak.
You're not in a green boat today, are you?
No. I've got a green screen, which I kind of quite like the green actually. So it's like green screen. Anyway,
I actually bought a green screen and then I realised it was too small. So it's a bit of fun. But Caspar, look, thank you so much for joining me. Why don't you share a little bit of your backstory? You've got an amazing story. Why don't you just give us a quick, I don't want to go too long, but I'd love to tell a little bit about the journey you went through from your business through to, sailing around the world and perhaps the challenges you had around that isolation piece, because I'm sure some people will resonate with that.
Yeah, no, of course. So let's cut to chase a little bit of this. So basically, I realized that I have some experience which maybe have some relevant ideas for a lot of people out there at the moment, because we're all dealing with self-isolation. But I've effectively had 3 years on a boat going around the world with 2 different teams. So I have a lot of experience of dealing with people in close quarters. The first time with 18 strong-minded, strong personalities in a 72-foot boat. And the second time with 4 other strong personalities, my wife and my 3 kids under the age of 10. So they both presented different challenges. The first time I didn't have to work. The second time I did have to work. So I was trying to juggle both sort of sailing a boat, running 3 businesses, and also homeschooling and sort of keeping a relationship with my wife and go on and so on. All those things, all those balls in the air. And the backstory to that was in 2009, made the decision, say, well, let's go and do something fundamentally different with our lives. I'd already sailed around the world in 2000. And so my wife and I came up with a 5-year plan to say, let's go and build a business, let's sell the business. And once we've done that, we'll go off and take 2 years around the world. As it happened, we actually sold the business whilst we were mid-journey. But anyway, the relevant part, I think, for what we're all facing today with the COVID-19 thing is, how do you deal with stuff in self-isolation with both your home team and your work team? Because although that was my choice before to go and do that, we're all thrown into the same metaphorical boat right now, and we've got to figure out how we're doing it, right? So.
For sure. What was the biggest challenge around, where were those moments of difficulty around that isolation, really, where it really worn you down to a critical point? And how did you kind of pull yourself around? Because you couldn't just step off the boat and go for a walk.
No, exactly. There's lots of things I can point to. I mean, and what's interesting is, one of the differences that we had before is, like, nobody was chucking cold buckets of water over us now. We've got nice warm houses. We've got Netflix. We've got YouTube. We've got FaceTime and all that sort of stuff. Didn't have any of that on the boat, which actually was quite a good thing, that we didn't have access to all that stuff. So therefore, we interacted more as a family team. But it's funny. I heard you saying a little bit before. I found there's 3 R's which found us really really helped us deal with stuff. The first one was managing our reactions. When stuff goes wrong, looking really hard at your emotional reaction. How do you respond and deal with stuff? So, we had like all sorts of crises hits, and, whether it was right from a child having a tantrum when I'm trying to do some work or a sailing maneuver, right through to having power failure in the middle of the ocean and some medical emergencies. And managing our emotional reactions is really important. The second thing is the routines, which I heard you mention before. And the third thing is the roles. What is everybody doing? Because now we've all been thrust into like a home environment. We're trying to work and like got a whole family around us in ways that we haven't before. We basically, our original rule book has been ripped up, thrown out the window. And together with your home team, you've got to say, how do we figure this stuff out now? And, that's a team activity. It's not a solo activity. And you can only do that with the people that you're sharing space with. And also, your work teams. How do you reconfigure stuff? So, the old rule book is gone, and it's adapting to what we have now. And that's what I say. It was my choice to do that before, so I had time to plan for it and think about it. We've all been thrown into this situation now. So we're figuring it all out on the go, aren't we? So.
Yeah. What was the best experience that you had from spending that time away with your family? If you could, because there's lots of people that are now learning to adapt, as you say, but I'm sure there's some real positives from this, because I know there's certain things that we're going to change now going forward. But what are those things when you're on your journey around the world that you've tried to keep back now, even in your normal life? Yeah,
great question. So look, there were lots. So the one was around family time together. It brought us together really as a family unit. It had the potential to do one of two things: send us one way or the other way. And the fact that we were forced to have those conversations about how do we work together, how do we do homeschooling, all that sort of stuff, that brought us really close together, gave us a really tight family bond. Look, it's a completely different thing. We were on a boat in different parts of the world. So I get that it's different to where we are now, but it's the conversation, how you interact together. So right now we're in a situation with our kids where, we've got kids now, they're 15, 13 and 8, and if they want to go and do stuff. So all we're doing is we're finding stuff that interests each child. So my 15-year-old daughter, she's getting us doing circuits. My 13-year-old son, he's doing loads of cooking. He's found newfound passion for that. And my 8-year-old daughter, she's got my wife's phone. She's sending poo emojis to all her friends if they're not answering to her. So she's kind of our social secretary. So it's finding out more about each individual person in your team and saying, okay, what are they all about? What do they love doing? And so that was a really cool thing about bringing us closer together. And also the, learning how to, work in sort of, for me, in really distinct, short, sharp bursts. So I wrote my first book whilst we were sailing, and I used to get up at 3 o'clock every morning and write 2,000 words a day. So over a 2-3 hour period, I'd be super, super focused because I knew the rest of my day was going to be distracted with other stuff. So developing a different work practice and a work pattern, that was really important as well. So just some of the things, I think. So.
Now you have written a great book, and I will put it in the comments at the end. What just to give some of our viewers and audience just a bit of a recap on, perhaps I was just curious, what made you decide to get up, sail around the world with your kids, take them out of school, or they well, not all of them, but take them out of their routine, and yourself. What because not everyone, a lot of people think about it, a lot of people talk about it, but not many people do it. So how did you make that all happen?
So I'll take it back to 2009, and everything in my world was pretty rubbish back then. And, I was working 16, 18 hours a day in the business, had a business which was losing money, and didn't see my wife. So, we were having lots of arguments, and, we were in a pretty ropey situation in terms of our relationship, didn't see the kids. And basically we just sort of sat down with a blank piece of paper and said, let's rewrite the story of our future. And it was a shared story, and it was, let's build a business up and let's sell that business. Let's figure out how do we really communicate and come up with a story. And then the icing on the cake was, let's go off and go and do sort of a 2-year adventure with the kids and go and do something that's memorable and life-changing. But it was that starting point, sort of, let's get the business sorted out, let's get the relationship sorted out, and then we'll go and do some fun stuff as well. So
we had a great question from Sabina. So thanks for that, Sabina. She actually asked, how did you guys readjust after the journey, which was probably not easy.
Yeah. So the answer to that is, so when I sailed around the world the first time, I found it really hard coming back and adjusting, because in my mind, the first sailing adventure I did in 2000 on what was called the world's toughest yacht race, it was the adventure of a lifetime. And you climb up the mountain. Where do you go when you come there? You can only crash down afterwards. The second time round, we knew that there was going to be other things afterwards. So we were going to create new businesses. We were going to go and do different things, have new adventures. So therefore, it was the mindset. There's always something else afterwards. That was the really important thing, to make sure that something came after that. And I guess, it's no different to where we are now with COVID-19, right? We're right in the eye of the storm at the moment. We're all trying to figure out a way forward. I speak to people whose businesses have been decimated, and they're trying to figure out what's going to happen. And you've got to come up with the best story that you've got of what does the future look like, and try and get your own fixed points of where you want to go to, and head towards that, because that's the thing that's going to keep you going through this. So
now, something a bit more down to earth in terms of that routine question again. I notice in my household, so the children are going to bed later and later at the moment, and getting up later and later, and it's almost like a weekend every day at the moment. How can you encourage? You talk about that team. How can you encourage your family members? Some may be having this challenge, maybe not, to perhaps do things and get back to that daily routine earlier in the day, rather than really be off plan, because it's really difficult for some people at the moment, particularly if they've got fat children, quite hypertension and real needs.
Yeah, so we've got exactly the same, by the way. So no different. So here's a couple of things that I've found. Firstly, the effect of these things, are, goodness knows, they are, if my daughter's on this, my 8-year-old daughter, if she's on that for 3-4 hours at a time playing roadblocks, she comes off and she's just a nightmare. So we've actually had to go cold turkey on her, and it took a day of doing that. But actually, I think for all of us, the danger is we get addicted to information flow, to news feeds, to social media feeds, and it's a really, really unhealthy place to be. So the first thing is, managing what we are all digesting. So trying to do that for the kids as well as for us. And there's a few tears and arguments when we have that conversation with the kids, for sure. The thing about the routine stuff, for me, it's a combination of having a plan, but also being flexible. So, one of my things is us having meal times together, where we sit around a table, we talk and we share stuff, and we interact like human beings, because it's so easy to disappear into our own worlds. I've got lots of work to do. I want to get on with that. But having that routine of sitting down together. And my 13-year-old son, he's turned into a little bit of a night owl. So I'm like nudging everybody. It's like, right, 8 o'clock, we're all going to have breakfast together. And then, so this morning, 2 out of the 3 kids turned up for the 8 o'clock breakfast. And, the wrong thing I think for me to do would be to flip out and go like that at them. But it's actually the way I've been doing it is just to sort of, when we've been having our sort of lunchtime meal, so for the 2 girls who were there this morning, so it's really good, you're being team players and sort of and praising them on the things they're doing well rather than things they're not doing well. So it's just nudges, because it's being mindful. Everyone's going through their own experience at the moment. So a combination of having a routine in mind, but also being a bit flexible with it because of what we're in right now.
We had a great question from Phil Fisher here. Thanks, Phil. He said, what changes did you see in the kids between the start and the end of your journey?
Yeah, good question. So I guess all of us relaxed into it and got used to being able to deal with uncertainty. So we had various challenging situations. And, one of the core things was seeing the resilience come through with kids. So, we had one challenging situation and the kids saw how we reacted to that and what was the blueprint, how do we deal with that. When we had another challenging situation in the storm later on, they were like, oh, it's kind of like before. And so they are sort of developing sort of what I would call resilience skills, which you only get when you're in the eye of a storm. So actually sharing the challenges with our kids, and they could all, because we're in a tiny boat, right? I mean, the boat, the living space on the boat was smaller than your average lounge. And it was 53 feet, which I promise you shrinks dramatically when you're there with your wife and your kids. And so it was them seeing us, how do we deal with stuff, and having the open conversations. We're having the open conversations with them now about what's going on. And so they see how we do stuff. So I think, probably one of the core things was, their ability to understand, take on board change, adaptability. And, for me, that's a core thing to teach your kids. So.
Just to come back to those organizations right now that are also having challenges, keeping morale, staff motivated, communication. What tips have you got for companies and organizations that where that's taking up a huge amount of their time? What advice would you give some of them?
Yeah, no, great question. So look, I'm working with a lot of companies at the moment who are companies who are thriving through to companies who are being decimated. Like the core thing that I'm sharing is to be more human. And it's like, it's just make sure you're connecting with everybody, understanding, because everybody's going through their own journey at the moment. And so it's just keeping that connection going. And clearly, technology is an amazing enabler of that, helping us to connect up with more people. But it's just checking in with each and every person, how they're doing, what do they need to be able to do their job effectively, keeping those lines of communication flowing. I mean, it's well documented. The most motivating thing for any team member is they feel that the person they're reporting to genuinely cares about them. And it's making sure, and some businesses are clearly having to make tough decisions at the moment and having to cut back headcount and all those sorts of things. But I think, there are ways and means of doing that make sure, it's like, here's what the situation is, this is what we're dealing with, and, being open and, trying to be as humane as possible with what's going on. So
I'm sure many people at Caspar are reevaluating their priorities in life, their life goals, how they want to be set up. What are the things, taking back to, sailing is obviously a big passion of yours, I know. What have you been thinking about as a family, and how has this time reflected on you, and what your thoughts on goals are?
Yeah, no. Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's kind of like it kind of feels like what's going on at the moment. It kind of like feels like normal to us, like in a strange sort of way. So it's kind of like business as usual. So I've been sort of head down to sort of writing my next book for the past 8 weeks. Right. I've been the most productive that I have ever been because I'm not traveling, I'm not doing all that sort of stuff. So actually I'm sort of, super focused. So, the plans that we had before are still the same plans. I don't think they've fundamentally changed as a result of what's happening right now. Like everybody else, we're just trying to get a sense of, how long is this going to go on for? I think it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. How do we deal with this?
Yeah.
And just keep on going. I mean, the kids are in full-time education right now, so that's got to continue. So we're not planning any more sailing plans right now. So
I had a quick question from Deepak. Deepak, thanks for asking that. He said the current isolation has been thrust upon us. How different do you find the current situation than to your journey with your family, which was a conscious choice and completely in your control?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's a very fair question as well. Look, the core thing is we had time to prepare for it. So, we thought about all the different things that we would need, but of course, that's not quite the same as when you're thrust into a situation. I remember sort of the first month or so, having gone from working 16 hours in the business to suddenly being 24/7 for my wife and kids. Yeah. I remember going a bit stir crazy and thinking, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this, and having to sort of get my own space of, how do we get hold of this? So the two clearly are different situations. So the fact that we had time to prepare mentally for it definitely helped. But the fact is, it all comes down to our emotional reactions, our mindset. How do we deal with what's going on? So even though it was our choice to do it before, and what's happening has just been thrust upon everybody, how we think about it, I think, is still the same, whichever scenario you're in. So
we're all going through some challenging days, I'm sure. Tell us about one of your most challenging days on the boat. Where were you? What happened? And how did you pull through it?
God, I've got a few to choose from. What springs to mind? We had double challenge We're sort of deep in the Indian Ocean, about 800 miles from the South African coast. And we had a rigging problem that our mast rigging wire started to break up. And so we had to contend with that. And at the same time as that, we had a medical emergency as well. So we ended up having to turn the boat around and actually sail back towards Australia to take the load off the rigging. And, often, remind me, by the way, back in 2008, when the business had our business just stopped. And, we had a cash flow crisis and we had to completely reinvent the business. And it felt like we were sailing in the wrong direction, doing consultancy work when that's the last thing that we wanted to go and do. Yeah. That situation in the Indian Ocean with both the boat failure and medical emergency, and just sort of saying, okay, how are we going to figure out the answer to all of these? And the answer, of course, is always about managing your reaction. The first of my 3 R's is, getting control of your emotion, finding out what options you've got. And then what are you going to do? What are you going to do in that situation? Because no one else is going to come and save you when you're out there. You've got to figure it out yourself. So
now people might be being a bit challenged by their online delivery of their Tesco's or Sainsbury's or whatever supermarket they choose. And of course, if they go in the supermarket, it's a bit more difficult. What was it like on the boat? Tell us about your supermarket trips.
So hey, look. Once you left land, that's it. There's no McDonald's, there's no Tesco's in the middle of the ocean, right? And so we had to plan for that, which the equivalent of the stockpiling, which I'm definitely not encouraging anyone to go and do at the moment, because I think the supply chains are pretty good with the supermarkets, and stuff is flowing through easily. I guess we could catch fish, so we could chuck a line over the side, so there was always fish there. I think one of the biggest challenges we had was making sure we had enough variety and keeping things interesting. But with supermarkets as they are, I don't really see that as an issue. And the fact that my son is now really into his cooking, that for me is a big win. So it's like fan those flames and get him doing as much of that as possible. So
fantastic, that's great. And what do you if there was one or two things that you got out of it, and your wife, that you would do again or want to change again if you went around the world on a boat, what would they be?
Where do I start? I think the core thing is, remembering that, it's anything you do with your team, it's a team activity, and that can't be you as the individual. So it's all about having those conversations with everybody and like engaging everybody in the conversation about what you want to do and what's important to each and every person. And that's a conversation we have now with all the kids. It's like, what's important to them, what do they want to do? Because when people feel listened to, they feel appreciated, they're going to engage on whatever that journey is that you want to go on. So
Now this obviously, again, being on a boat for that length of time is a bit like a marathon as well, not a sprint, right? So I'm guessing as well with COVID-19, and to answer Sabina's question, she was talking about how long is this going to go on for? What are we going to do? This could go on for some time. Certainly social distancing, and also that working from home. How are people going to keep that resilience up when actually it's going to be challenging at some points to contain that resilience?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So here's how it works in my mind. That's saying you plan for the worst and you expect the best. And so in my mind, that we could be in this situation for 12, 18, 24 months. And this could be the new normal for quite a while. In my mind, if it reduces shorter than that, fantastic. Then we can go and get on with things again. So I think it's a question of managing our mindset. And I see this stuff about lockdowns being lifted. Well, it's like, well, okay, that might happen, but that hasn't solved the problem. The problem's not gone away. So I'm no medical expert or anything like that. So for me, it's managing your mindset that we are in for a marathon. It's funny. I remember when I was on the first yacht race and we sailed around Cape Horn, and we went from sort of flat, calm seas to suddenly 50, 60 foot waves. And I remember thinking, it's like, it was another 40 days until we got to New Zealand. And it's like, I've got no idea how I'm going to be able to manage that and to deal with that. The enormity of what was in front of me terrified me. And I remember talking to a very dear friend of mine, Ian, and basically he said, look, Caspar, you just got to take it one watch at a time. And what with our day was broken up into 4-hour chunks. So he said, just take it each 4-hour chunk at a time. Yes, you're getting settled in, there we're going to be a marathon, but don't think too far ahead. Just deal with what you can immediately control, what's in front of you right now. Don't run ahead of yourself. and just take it that step at a time. And for me, that was super useful and stopped my mind running out of control. And the fact that on a boat we didn't have access to news feeds and social media, I think was a super, super healthy thing. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I'm saying to a lot of people I know is, dial that right down. If it was a mental health problem before with news feeds, it's 10x that now. So be mindful about what you're all putting into your minds is my thought on that.
And finally, I don't know about, some people in isolation currently might have more time on their hands. Others won't have more time on their hands. They're busier than ever. How do you, when you were planning, for example, your trip around the world, how did you fit in the time to do all those things? I know you work very long hours, you work very late. How did you manage to implement that plan, whether it's a trip around the world or something else that people are doing in their lives? How do you manage that with all the other stuff we need to do in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, no. So the first part is teamwork, right? So my wife and I, we have this standing joke between us. If anything was down to her, it would never get started. If it was down to me, it would never get finished. So knowing what are your strengths, what are you really, really good at? By the way, I've just actually, so something I normally charge as part of a course, I just put it out live on my website, casparcraven.com, which is the superpowers quiz, where you can, it's a really short sort of email. You email it to a handful of people you know, and basically other people tell you what you're amazing at. And it gives you a nice warm feeling every time you do it. So it's go play with it. It's fun. But it's finding out for each and every person what are the things that they are brilliant at doing, and then get in that zone. So my wife is super, super detail orientated. So when we were planning for this, we became ship's doctors. We became experts. Well, not experts. We trained in all the different areas that we would think we would need to do. So it's having someone who's got the attention to detail, and then it's a ruthless prioritization. What are the most important things we need to do right now? And and cutting out stuff that's not important, and managing our health, our time. So lots of exercise, eating healthily, all those things, super important to how we manage things at the moment. So the right people on the team, prioritization, and manage your own energy.
And I know that but prior to that, of course, your wife wasn't a sailor, wasn't trained as a sailor, or been on a course, and both of you had to go through the teaching. I don't know, whatever you call it, qualification, or the work you had to do to enable you to do the home teaching. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, so Nicola, my wife, she had to learn how to sail, and it was not me who was teaching her to sail, by the way, for all sorts of good reasons, which you can imagine.
Learn a driver and the parents was never good, was it?
Exactly. But yes, going and sort of learning how to do homeschooling. I mean, that zero experience in doing that. And the shortcut to that, by the way, which may be a useful hack for everyone at the moment, is for each and every child, and read for that adult in your team, what's something they're really curious about and interested. Follow people's passions. You work with the energy that you've got. And if I'm now trying to get my 8-year-old to follow the curriculum, then that's really, really hard. So it's being a bit flexible. So she's interested in robots right now. So we're looking at sort of Arduino programming. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but anyway, so some computer programming, because she's interested in that. So we're just following the things that each person is most curious about.
Fantastic. Well, look, Caspar, thank you for giving me half an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. Loads of stuff there. I'll put a link up to the website so people can go and have a look at that on the thing. I'll put a link to the book. Everyone should be checking that out on Amazon and buying it. It's amazing. Even if you're not a sailor, which I'm not really, I can sail a boat in my bathtub, but I'd love to be able to sail, learn from sailing around the world. So, Caspar, thank you again, and take care, and I'll see you soon.
Great to see you, David.
See ya. Bye. Wow, that was amazing. And look, I just want to say thank you for Caspar for joining me. Sorry about the tech issues at the start there. I think, again, even if you're not a sailor yourself, there's so much you can learn from the stuff that Caspar was doing, and his time at sea with his family. It's tough for some of us in isolation right now. Some people are really feeling it. If you need just someone to pick up the phone to, that can be a huge thing. Or even if you are feeling good, pick up the phone. Call some other people that you know. It might be obviously your family members that you haven't spoken to in a while. It could be old colleagues that you used to work with. And in fact, they could be out of a job right now. They could just be in a role, but not getting much interaction. So, pick up a call. I called someone today I haven't spoke to for 6 years, and it was fantastic to hear their voice. They know who they are, Jane. So it was lovely talking to you. And, just pick up the call and see how people are. Make sure they're safe. Make sure they're well. and talking is good. So again, I really appreciate Caspar joining us on the live chat. You'll be able to listen back to this later if you haven't caught it live. And again, Caspar sailed twice around the world amazingly with his family on the second time. And that's taught us, he's given us some great insight around managing things through isolation. So I hope that was good. Join me. I think in the next 2 weeks, I've got another special guest coming on. I'll be publicizing it here on LinkedIn. If you're interested in this format and you want to get involved, let me know. And I hope you're safe and well, and we'll speak again soon.